"You need a home and I need a mommy," said the little girl to the young homeless woman at the bus stop. The rain came down in sheets that November evening, turning the downtown bus stop into a cold, unforgiving island of glass and metal. Most people huddled under the shelter, eyes glued to their phones, pretending not to notice the young woman sitting on the wet bench outside, her thin jacket soaked through. A torn backpack clutched against her chest like a shield. But 6-year-old Emma noticed everything. She tugged on her father's sleeve, her wide brown eyes fixed on the trembling figure just beyond the shelter's edge. "Daddy, that lady is getting all wet." Michael Chen barely heard her. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the maze of overdue bills scattered across their kitchen table, the eviction notice tucked in his coat pocket, the job interview he'd bombed that afternoon. 3 years since Sarah died, and he still couldn't seem to get his feet back under him. Every day felt like drowning in slow motion. "Daddy," Emma's voice grew more insistent. "Not now, sweetheart," he murmured, checking his phone for the 4th time. The bus was 12 minutes late. Of course it was. What happened next would replay in Michael's mind 1,000 times in the months to come, each time with the same sense of wonder and disbelief. Emma slipped her small hand out of his and walked straight into the rain. Emma. Michael lunged forward, but she was already standing in front of the homeless woman, rain streaming down her face, her pink backpack bobbing as she spoke with the earnest intensity only a child can muster. The woman looked up, startled. She couldn't have been more than 25, with hollow cheeks and eyes that held the kind of exhaustion that goes bone deep. Dark hair hung in wet tangles around her face, and there was a fading bruise on her jaw that made Michael's stomach tighten. "You look sad," Emma said simply. "Are you okay?" The woman's eyes widened, then softened. For a moment she seemed unable to speak. When she finally found her voice, it was barely a whisper. I'm fine, sweetheart. You should go back to your daddy." But Emma didn't move. Instead, she did something that stopped Michael's heart. She reached out and took the woman's cold, trembling hand in both of her small ones. "You need a home," Emma said, her voice clear and certain despite the rain. "And I need a mommy." The words hung in the air like a prayer, impossible and perfect and completely devastating. Michael stood frozen, one foot in the shelter, one in the rain, watching his daughter's small frame shake with cold as she held this stranger's hand. Around them, the other commuters had gone silent, phones forgotten, witnessing something raw and real that didn't belong in their carefully ordered world. The young woman's face crumpled. A single sob escaped her lips before she pressed her free hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the flood. Tears mixed with rain, and for a heartbeat, Michael saw past the dirt and the fear to someone who had once been cherished. Before life had stripped everything away. "Emma," he said gently, moving toward them, his own voice thick with emotion he couldn't name. "Come here, baby." But Emma just squeezed the woman's hand tighter, looking back at her father with those impossibly hopeful eyes, the same eyes her mother had when she believed in impossible things. When she saw light where others saw only darkness. "Can she come home with us, Daddy, please?" The bus pulled up then, its brakes hissing, door folding open like a mouth waiting to swallow them all back into their separate, lonely lives. Michael looked at his daughter, at the homeless woman whose tears wouldn't stop, at the choice standing before him in the rain, and in that moment, with water soaking through his shoes and the last of his money in his wallet, Michael Chen made a decision that would change everything. "What's your name?" Michael asked softly, crouching down to their level, letting the rain soak through his only good jacket. The woman looked at him with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust kindness. "Grace," she whispered. "Grace Morgan," Michael extended his hand. "I'm Michael. This is Emma." He paused, feeling the weight of what he was about to say. "We don't have much. Our apartment is small, and honestly, we're barely hanging on ourselves, but if you need a safe place tonight, we have a couch." Grace stared at his outstretched hand as if it might vanish if she touched it. "I can't. I shouldn't." Her voice broke. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're cold," Emma piped up, still holding Grace's hand. "I know you're scared. Mommy used to say that's when people need kindness most." Something flickered across Grace's face, recognition maybe, or grief, for a life that once included mothers who said wise things. She looked down at Emma, and Michael saw her defenses crack just a little wider. "Just for tonight," Michael said quietly. "No strings. No questions if you don't want to answer them." The bus driver honked impatiently. People were staring now, some with curiosity, others with judgment. Michael felt their eyes like weights, heard the unspoken questions. What kind of father invites a homeless stranger home? What if she's dangerous? What if she steals from you? But when he looked at Emma's hopeful face, at Grace's trembling shoulders, all he could think was, what if she's just someone who needs help? What if that's enough? Grace finally took his hand. Hers was ice cold and shaking. "Just tonight," she echoed, her voice barely audible. The apartment was worse than Michael remembered. He saw it through Grace's eyes as they climbed the 3 flights of stairs. The peeling paint, the flickering hallway light, the faint smell of mildew that never quite went away no matter how much he cleaned. Their unit was a cramped 1-bedroom where Emma slept in the bedroom, and Michael took the couch every night. Surrounded by cardboard boxes he kept meaning to unpack but never did. Grace stood in the doorway, dripping onto the worn welcome mat Sarah had picked out 5 years ago. She looked even smaller inside, like she might disappear if anyone spoke too loudly. "Bathroom's there," Michael said, grabbing some towels from the hallway closet. "Take a hot shower." "I'll find some dry clothes." Grace accepted the towels but didn't move. Her eyes swept the tiny space, the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter, the photographs of Sarah that Michael couldn't bear to take down, the crayons and coloring books scattered across the coffee table like evidence of a childhood that deserved better than this. "You have a beautiful home," she said quietly. Michael almost laughed. Almost, but something in her tone stopped him. She meant it. To her, this cramped, falling-apart apartment was beautiful, because it had warmth, because someone cared enough to keep the toys picked up and the dishes clean, because love lived here even if money didn't. "Thank you," he said instead, and meant it just as much. While Grace showered, Emma sat at the kitchen table, watching her father heat up canned soup with an intensity that made him nervous. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart." "Is Grace going to be my new mommy?" Michael's hand stilled on the pot. "God, how did you explain the world to a 6-year-old who'd already lost so much? How did you teach her about complexity and caution without crushing the beautiful, terrible hope that made her reach for strangers in the rain?" "Grace is someone who needs help right now," he said carefully, stirring the soup. "And we're helping her. That's all. But she needs a home. And I need a mommy. You said mommy would want us to be happy." "I did say that." Michael's throat tightened. "But happiness isn't that simple, Emma. We can't just decide someone's going to be part of our family." "Why not?" "'Cause life doesn't work that way. Because I'm barely keeping us afloat. 'Cause I'm terrified of letting anyone new in and watching them leave too. Because Grace has her own life," he said finally. "Her own story. And we don't know anything about it yet." Emma considered this, her small face serious. Then she said something that punched straight through all of Michael's careful logic. "Maybe that's okay. Maybe we can learn together." The bathroom door opened, and Grace emerged in Michael's old NYU sweatshirt and a pair of sweatpants that were comically too long on her small frame. Her hair hung damp around her shoulders, and without the layers of grime and rain, Michael could see how young she really was. Barely more than a kid herself. But it was her eyes that caught him. Now that the fear had receded slightly, they held something else: intelligence, caution, and a deep, aching sadness that he recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. "Thank you," Grace said, her voice stronger now. "I haven't. It's been months since I had a hot shower." Emma patted the chair next to her. "Come eat soup with us. Daddy makes it really good. He puts crackers in it." A ghost of a smile touched Grace's lips. Crackers and soup, fancy. And just like that, the 3 of them sat at Michael's small kitchen table, eating 99-cent soup like it was a feast, the rain drumming against the windows like a lullaby for the broken things they all carried inside. Grace ate slowly, like someone who'd learned not to trust that the meal wouldn't be taken away. Emma chattered between spoonfuls, telling Grace about her school, her best friend Mia, the goldfish that died last week that they'd buried in a matchbox behind the building. Normal, beautiful 6-year-old things that filled the apartment with life. Michael watched Grace's face as she listened. Saw something thaw there, a hunger that had nothing to do with the soup. What about you? Grace asked Emma, her voice tentative as if she were learning to speak again. What's your favorite thing? Emma didn't hesitate. Drawing. And Daddy's bedtime stories, and I used to love dancing with Mommy, but she's in heaven now. Grace's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. Her eyes found Michael's across the table, and in them, he saw understanding. Not pity, understanding. The kind that only comes from knowing what loss tastes like. I'm sorry, Grace said softly. It's okay, Emma replied with the casual wisdom of a child who'd learned to carry grief too early. Daddy says she's watching us from the stars. That's why I always wave at the sky before bed. Something broke in Grace's expression. Something that had been holding tight finally letting go. That's really beautiful, Emma. After dinner, while Emma brushed her teeth, Grace helped Michael clean up. They worked in silence, and he was acutely aware of her presence in his space, the way she moved carefully, touching everything like it might shatter, how she washed each dish twice as if trying to earn her place. You don't have to do that, Michael said gently. Grace kept scrubbing. I want to. You've given me something I didn't think existed anymore. A meal and a shower? Hope. The word hung between them, fragile and fierce. Michael set down the pot he'd been drying and leaned against the counter, studying her. In the kitchen's warm light, he could see the story written on her skin, the bruises in various stages of healing, the too thin arms, the way she held herself like someone expecting a blow. Grace, he started, then stopped. How did you ask someone about their demons without becoming just another person demanding pieces of them? She read his hesitation. You want to know how I ended up at that bus stop? Only if you want to tell me. She was quiet for a long moment, her hands still in the dishwater. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I was engaged, Tyler. We were supposed to get married in September. She paused, and Michael saw her jaw tighten. He seemed perfect at first, charming, successful. Said he loved me more than anything. Michael's stomach dropped. He knew where this story was going. The first time he hit me, he cried after, said he was sorry, that it would never happen again. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Her voice cracked. By the time I realized it was getting worse, I had no money. He controlled everything. My job, my phone, my friends. He'd isolated me from everyone. Emma's voice called from the bathroom. Daddy, I'm ready. 1 second, sweetheart. Michael called back, then turned to Grace. You don't have to finish. I want to, she said, meeting his eyes with sudden intensity. 3 months ago, it got really bad. Hospital bad. And something inside me just snapped. I realized if I stayed, he was going to kill me. So when they released me, I didn't go back. I had nothing, no money, nowhere to go. I've been on the streets ever since, sleeping in shelters when I could get a bed, bus stops when I couldn't. Michael felt rage and sorrow twist in his chest. Did you report him? A bitter laugh escaped her. To who? Tyler's family owns half the judges in this city. His father made it very clear what would happen if I tried to press charges. They have lawyers, money, power. She looked down at her hands, still submerged in the soapy water. I had nothing. I am nothing. That's not true. Grace looked up, startled by the firmness in his voice. You survived, Michael said, moving closer. You got out. You're standing here. That's not nothing, Grace. That's everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't feel like I survived. I feel like I'm just waiting to disappear completely. Before Michael could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway wearing her rainbow pajamas. Clutching the worn stuffed elephant that had been her mother's, she walked straight to Grace and held out the elephant. This is Peanut, Emma said solemnly. He helps when you're scared. You can hold him tonight if you want. Grace stared at the offered toy, at this child's pure, uncomplicated kindness, and something in her finally, completely broke. She sank to her knees, gathering Emma into a hug that shook with the force of everything she'd been holding back. Thank you, she sobbed into Emma's hair. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Emma patted her back gently, the way Sarah used to when Michael woke up from nightmares in those first months after her death. It's okay to be sad, Emma whispered. Daddy says crying just means you have big feelings, and big feelings mean you're still alive. Michael had to turn away, wiping at his own eyes. His daughter, this incredible, empathetic, impossibly wise little girl, had somehow learned to turn grief into grace. That night, Grace slept on the couch wrapped in their spare blanket, Peanut the elephant tucked under her arm. Michael lay awake in Emma's room on the inflatable mattress they'd pulled out, listening to his daughter's even breathing, thinking about the stranger in his living room and the choice he'd made at the bus stop. He didn't know if it was the right choice, didn't know if Grace was safe, if this would end badly, if he was putting Emma at risk by letting his daughter's hope override his caution, but he knew what Sarah would say. She'd quote the poem she'd loved, the one about the light between shadows, about how sometimes the only way forward was to reach out your hand in the dark and trust that someone would reach back. In the living room, Grace lay awake too, staring at the ceiling, feeling the warmth of clean clothes and a full stomach, and something even more precious, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. Grace had been with them for 5 days when everything changed. She'd fallen into their small routine with surprising ease, making breakfast while Michael got Emma ready for school, cleaning the apartment until it shone in ways it hadn't since Sarah died. Always careful never to overstep, never to assume she belonged there permanently. At night, she'd sit with Emma and help with homework, her patience endless as she explained math problems in ways that made Emma's eyes light up with understanding. Michael found himself looking forward to coming home. The apartment felt alive again, filled with 2 voices instead of 1, with laughter that didn't sound forced. Grace was smart, wickedly so. She'd studied engineering before Tyler, had dreams of designing sustainable housing. She'd talk about load-bearing structures and energy efficiency while doing dishes, her eyes distant with remembered ambitions. "You should go back to school," Michael said one evening. Grace had just laughed, but it was a sad sound. "With what money? What address?" "I'm technically still homeless, Michael. Your couch doesn't count as legal residency. Don't." She'd touched his arm gently. "Don't make promises you can't keep. She gestured around the apartment. "This is already more than I deserve. Everyone deserves safety. Not everyone gets it." But that conversation felt like years ago now, though it had only been yesterday. Because this morning Michael had woken to Emma's scream. He'd bolted from the air mattress, heart hammering, and found Emma pressed against the living room window, pointing down at the street with a shaking finger. "Daddy, there's a man. He keeps walking back and forth, looking up at our building." Grace had gone white as a sheet. She'd moved to the window, peeked out, then stumbled back like she'd been struck. "It's him," she'd whispered. "It's Tyler." Now, 4 hours later, Michael sat at the kitchen table with his phone in one hand and a baseball bat in the other, trying to figure out what the hell to do. Emma was at school, thank God, but she'd be home in 3 hours. Grace had locked herself in the bathroom, and he could hear her quiet crying through the door. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number?" Against his better judgment, he answered. "Michael Chen?" The voice was smooth, cultured, and filled with the kind of casual authority that came from never being told no. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Who is this?" "Tyler Morrison. I think we should talk." "Man to man." Michael's grip tightened on the bat. "There's nothing to talk about. Grace doesn't want to see you." A soft laugh. "Grace?" The name dripped with condescension. "Is that what she's calling herself these days? Did she tell you about the money she stole? The credit cards? How she's wanted for fraud in 3 states? I don't believe you." "Of course you don't. She's very good at playing the victim. Very convincing." A pause. "Look, Mr. Chen, I'm a reasonable man. I don't want trouble. I just want my fiancée back. We can talk this through like civilized people, or I can involve the police." "Your choice, the police." Michael stood pacing. "Go ahead, call them. Let's talk about the hospital records, the bruises." The what?" "The lies of an unstable woman with a history of mental illness." Tyler's voice never lost its pleasant tone, which somehow made it worse. "I have doctors who will testify to her condition. I have witnesses who will confirm she's delusional. I have resources, Mr. Chen. What do you have?" The line went dead. Michael stood there, phone pressed to his ear, feeling the walls close in. Tyler was right. What did he have? No money for lawyers, no influence, no power. Just a broken-down apartment and a baseball bat, and the desperate need to protect someone who'd stumbled into his life 5 days ago. The bathroom door opened. Grace emerged, her face blotchy from crying, but her jaw set with determination. "I'm leaving," she said. "I won't bring this down on you and Emma. You've done enough." "No, Michael, I said no." He set down the phone, facing her. "You're not going back to him. I won't let that happen." "You can't stop it," Grace's voice broke. "He's not going to give up. He never gives up. He'll destroy you trying to get to me. Your job, your apartment, your custody of Emma. He'll use everything as a weapon. Then we fight." "With what?" She laughed, and it was the most despairing sound Michael had ever heard. "He's already won. He always wins." Michael thought of Sarah, of the cancer that had stolen her away despite every fight, every prayer, every desperate bargain with God. He thought of Emma asking why good people suffer, and how he'd had no answer then and no answer now. He thought about how unfair the world was, how it protected monsters with money and crushed the vulnerable. But then he thought about the bus stop, about Emma's small hand reaching out in the rain, about the choice to help even when helping was hard. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we don't have to fight alone." Grace looked at him questioningly. Michael grabbed his laptop, fingers flying across the keys. "You said Tyler's family is powerful, connected, that everyone's afraid of them." "Yeah, but you know what powerful people hate?" He turned the screen toward her. "Light, exposure, having their dirty secrets aired where their country club friends can see." On the screen was a local news website. Michael had pulled up the contact form for their investigative team. "We tell your story," he said. "Not to the police, to everyone. Social media, news outlets. We make so much noise that he can't make you disappear quietly. We make him toxic to touch." Grace stared at the screen, then at him. "That could backfire. He could sue for defamation." He could, Michael agreed. "Or we could do nothing and let him take you." "Those are the options, Grace, risky or surrender." For a long moment she didn't speak. Michael watched her face, saw the fear, the calculation, the desperate hope warring with learned helplessness. This was the moment, he realized. The moment where she chose whether she was still that woman who'd had dreams of engineering and building things, or whether Tyler had taken that from her forever. Grace sat down at the laptop. Her hands shook as they hovered over the keyboard. "Tell me what to write," she whispered, and Michael did. The story went viral in 48 hours. Grace's face, thin, haunted, but unflinchingly brave, appeared on news sites, social media feeds, and morning talk shows. She'd written her truth with a clarity that came from having nothing left to lose. The escalating abuse, the control, the night she'd fled to save her life. But more than that, she'd written about the aftermath, the invisibility of being homeless, the shame, the way society looked through her like she was already gone. And she'd written about Emma, about a 6-year-old girl who'd seen her at a bus stop and offered the one thing Grace had been certain no longer existed: unconditional kindness. The response was overwhelming. Local domestic violence organizations reached out with legal resources. A pro bono lawyer, a fierce woman named Patricia who'd left Tyler's father's firm years ago after witnessing their corruption, took Grace's case. The hospital produced Grace's medical records, which told their own damning story. Women who'd dated Tyler before came forward with their own accounts, shattering his carefully constructed image. Tyler Morrison's world didn't collapse all at once, but it began to crack, pieces falling away as the light exposed what he'd kept hidden. His father's law firm issued a terse statement: "These are private matters." Tyler himself vanished from public view, his social media scrubbed clean. His engagement to a socialite suddenly, quietly called off. It wasn't justice, not yet, not fully. The legal battle would take months, maybe years, but it was something. It was Grace standing in Michael's living room, watching the news coverage with tears streaming down her face, whispering, "They believe me. They actually believe me." 3 months later, on a Saturday morning bright with late winter sun, Michael knocked on the bathroom door. "Grace, you okay in there?" The door opened. Grace stood there in the dress they'd bought from the thrift store. Simple blue, perfect. Her hair pulled back, her face glowing with an emotion Michael had never seen on her before. Joy. Real unguarded joy. "I got in," she said, her voice shaking. "The engineering program at State, full scholarship. I got in, Michael. He pulled her into a hug, feeling her shake with sobs that were finally, blessedly, happy ones. I knew you would. I knew it. I wouldn't have even applied if you hadn't. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Thank you. For believing I was worth saving. You saved yourself, Grace. Emma and I just held the door open. From the living room came a squeal of delight. They found Emma jumping on the couch, technically forbidden, but Michael couldn't bring himself to stop her, waving a piece of paper. Grace got into college. Does that mean she gets to stay with us forever? The question hung in the air, suddenly serious despite Emma's bouncing. Grace and Michael looked at each other, and in that moment, Michael realized something had shifted between them. It had been gradual, so gradual he hadn't noticed until now. The way Grace's smile made his chest feel lighter. How she'd started touching his arm when she talked, unconscious and natural. The way she'd fold into their evening routine like she'd always been there, like she was meant to be there. The lease is up next month, Michael said slowly. I was thinking, maybe we could find somewhere bigger. A 2-bedroom. He paused, heart hammering. If you want to stay? No pressure, just if you want. Grace's eyes went wide. Michael, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He took a breath, aware of Emma watching them with those 2 wise eyes. These past few months with you here, we've been happier than we've been since Sarah died. You've given Emma something I couldn't give her. Not just help with homework or clean dishes, but you've shown her what resilience looks like. What strength is. You've shown both of us. I'm still figuring everything out, Grace said, but her voice was soft, hopeful. I'm still broken in a lot of ways. So are we, Michael smiled. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we figure it out together. Emma stopped bouncing. Does that mean Grace is staying? Grace looked at this impossible, beautiful little girl who'd reached for her in the rain, who'd offered her stuffed elephant and unshakable faith that people were worth saving. She looked at Michael, this single father holding his small world together with duct tape and determination, who'd risked everything for a stranger because his daughter asked him to be kind. Yeah, Grace said, her voice thick with emotion. Yeah, I think I'm staying. Emma launched herself off the couch into Grace's arms, and they both tumbled to the floor in a tangle of laughter. Michael joined them, this makeshift family built from broken pieces and bus stop moments and the crazy, impossible belief that sometimes reaching out your hand was enough. 6 months later, the new apartment had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that didn't leak, and windows that faced east so the morning sun could pour in like liquid gold. Grace's engineering textbooks lined one bookshelf. Emma's drawings covered the refrigerator, and Michael's old photographs of Sarah held a place of honor on the mantel, because Grace understood that loving someone new didn't mean forgetting who came. Before Emma had taken to calling Grace, Gracie Mom, a compromise she'd invented herself. Grace never corrected her. On Tuesday evenings, Grace volunteered at the homeless shelter where she'd once slept, telling her story to others who thought they'd disappeared. On Thursday nights, Michael and Grace would cook dinner together while Emma did homework. Their movements synchronized like they'd been doing this for decades instead of months. The legal case against Tyler was still ongoing. There were hard days when Grace woke up gasping from nightmares, when the trauma felt too big to carry. But she didn't carry it alone anymore. One evening, as they sat on their small balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose, Emma between them with her head on Grace's lap, Michael thought about that rainy night at the bus stop. Do you ever think about how random it was? He asked Grace quietly. That you were at that specific bus stop. That Emma saw you. That I said yes. Grace was quiet for a moment, her fingers gently stroking Emma's hair. I don't think it was random, she said finally. I think sometimes the universe puts people exactly where they need to be. And sometimes broken things fit together in ways that make them whole. Emma stirred, not asleep yet. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart. Do you think Mommy knows about Gracie, Mom? Do you think she's happy? Michael looked up at the emerging stars, remembering Sarah's laugh, her fierce love, her belief that the world was better than it seemed if you just had the courage to reach for it. Yeah, Emma, I think she knows. And I think she's really, really proud of you, Emma smiled. Settling deeper into Grace's lap, content in the way only children can be when they feel completely safe, completely loved. And as the last light faded from the sky, Michael realized something profound. Healing wasn't about forgetting the pain or pretending the wounds didn't exist. Healing was about finding the courage to build something beautiful from the broken pieces, about choosing compassion when fear said to walk away, about believing that sometimes, just sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. Sometimes heroes didn't wear capes or make grand gestures. Sometimes they were just 6-year-old girls who refused to ignore suffering, single fathers who said yes when it was easier to say no, and broken young women who found the strength to keep breathing, keep fighting, keep believing. Sometimes the family you needed wasn't the one you started with, but the one you built together, piece by piece, choice by choice, in the rain at a bus stop where 3 lives intersected and everything changed. And sometimes, that was more than enough. It was everything.